And so one time during the year, I was able to finish before she was able to finish double checking her answers. And I had the fortune of just nailing every addition fact that week. And so I was the grand recipient of a king-size Snickers bar. And I brought it to lunch, and I was king of the school for one day. The child walking around with a king-size Snickers bar. I wielded it like a king's baton around the lunchroom. And likely had far too much sugar and was a huge pain in the ass for the afternoon. But anyway, that was pretty fun. And they would do stuff like that to encourage academics. There was also a lot of kind of beyond the normal curriculum. Our first grade teacher, she always had, she would hatch ducklings every year. And so if you got to be in this first grade class, she had an incubator. And so she would get like 8 eggs. And just throughout the year, we would watch these ducks incubate. And we would learn about like the life cycle of eggs and animals and biology and science and things like that. And then when the eggs hatched, she would keep them in a little kiddie pool in the classroom, which was the most exciting thing in the world. And then the ducks, they only knew us and they would be part of the class. So we would walk around the school. You know, elementary school, you would walk around a single file line. They would follow us in line. Which was, again, the coolest thing in the world when you're 6 or 7 years old. So we would be, you know, walking around, quiet, single file line. Behind us were the ducks, quiet, single file line. And everyone else was so jealous that we got to hang out with the ducks. And lucky for me, I was in that class. And there were other classes that I'm sure did other cool things like that. But I have repressed those memories and only remembered the fun stuff for me. So the school actually also had a good amount of extracurriculars for an elementary school. We had a basketball team I played on. We had a flag football team that was absolutely hapless. Anyway, we also had a big library with tons of books and a chess club that would meet in that library. And I was an active chess player as well. And every Thursday, it might have been Tuesday and Thursday, but it might have just been Tuesday. But we would, you know, spend an hour or two learning chess, playing chess in the library, which was a ton of fun. I had a brief career as a competitive chess player. I would go to all those elementary school tournaments, down to Springfield, Illinois for the state championships. My career peaked in about 5th grade. I made it I never won any tournaments really, but I made it to the state honor roll, which I think they just, they gave, you know, like 40 extra trophies to kids who didn't win anything, but were, you know, coming to a lot of tournaments and not being bad to encourage them to keep playing. So that was the peak of my chess career. But it was a good time, and I learned a lot. And, you know, in 3rd and 4th grade, the teachers were great also. We had the math, social studies, history. And so for me, a really, really pivotal moment in my academic career, and I guess really in my life, came in 3rd grade when I started to really bother my teachers with how fast I would move on the math work, where they would give us work to do, and I would just really, really get it done speedy. And so my 3rd grade teacher, I think, started just letting me work ahead in the textbook. And I finished the book so quickly that she started giving me the math from the 4th grade textbook, which I was able to figure out with a little help from my teachers. I'm sure it was a lot of help from my teachers, but I was able to figure out kind of without the standard classroom instruction. And so by the end of 4th grade, I think I had already finished the 5th grade math curriculum. And what was great about the school is they were really encouraging of me. It wasn't like they were like, oh, just sit in your seat and color. Is they kept giving me more work, and they kept, you know, wanting to challenge me. And it wasn't just me. There was one of my best friends who was also in my class, Noah Corman. He also was speedy and annoying like me. And so we worked on that together. And so at the end of 4th grade, they let us take this test that they would give to 5th graders usually for math placement in middle school. And we passed the test, and so they arranged for us in 5th grade to start the day at the local middle school, taking a middle school math class, so we wouldn't be wasting any time. And that was just so kind of formative for me and so encouraging for me as a student to know that like this school wanted to challenge me and wanted me to be as successful as possible and weren't trying to hold me back. And Noah and I were extremely fortunate to be able to be in that position. And looking back, there may have been more students who could have, you know, handled the work at the same load or could have been advanced more. And I think it just speaks to how, you know, important it is to challenge students and make sure that everyone is getting what they need, whether that's, you know, extra help to catch up or extra help to go forward. And so in 5th grade, Noah and I would go to the middle school to start the day. We would take math class, and the district arranged for a school bus to take us back to the elementary school. Now, for whatever reason, the only bus that was available was a big yellow school bus, one of those like 80-seaters. And so from the middle school, there was me, Noah, and then two girls from a different elementary school who was in the same position as us. And so every week after first period in middle school, or every day after first period in middle school, this big yellow school bus would come. And me and Noah would go sit in the way back of the school bus. And the two girls, Maggie and Sarah, would sit in the very front seat of the school bus. And I don't think Noah and I talked to Maggie and Sarah once the entire school year. And that was fun. No, we all had fun on that bus ride. So during fifth grade was a blast. Noah and I, we got to do like the colonial fair. We got to do the hobby fair. And then during math class, we were doing our math homework from middle school. But we were able to do that pretty quickly too. So we ended up just getting to spend a lot of time in the hallway making up like silly songs and playing old computer games, Bug Dub and Nanosaur, to be specific, if you're familiar with those old iMac games. So that was my elementary school. Lincoln Elementary School was really great. From there, we moved on to Nichols Middle School. Nichols Middle School was the combination of three elementary schools in Evanston. I think it was Lincoln Elementary School, Washington Elementary School, and Dewey Elementary School. Don't hold me to that. There may be something different. But those were the three that I remember. And Nichols Middle School was a large 6th through 8 middle school that was absolute chaos. Middle schools in general are kind of crazy. I mean, you just take like all the kids who have all the most hormones, their bodies are changing so much, they have no idea how to handle themselves, and you just throw them all in one big building. So that's kind of crazy. But I guess I learned enough. I don't know. The classes weren't great. One of my friends recently now just got married and had a kid, and him and his wife are looking to move into the suburbs of Chicago. And they were looking at schools, and he was like, hey, I was looking at these school rankings. And in Evanston, he's like, almost all of the elementary schools are excellent, and the high school is pretty great, and then all of the middle schools are bad. He's like, how can that be? I don't know how that can be, really. It's just, I guess, middle school. I don't know. I don't think we've solved middle schools. I had a good time, though. The classes weren't maybe the best, and this is maybe where a big source of kind of academic separating happened, where there were classes you could take, and if your parents were on your back to really do the work well, and if you had supports at home or supports outside of home, or if you were good at getting supports from the classroom, you could really learn a lot in Nichols Middle School, but it was also really easy to skate by. And there were teachers who were, there's some really good teachers, but some of the teachers were overwhelmed. There was, some really cool electives. We had 6th grade, we had art, where we had like, visual art, we had music, we had drama, but there was also wood shop and sewing, which was interesting. Kind of the gender dynamics of that were interesting as the two additional art classes, because wood shop, I think you would think is stereotypically a little bit, masculine, and sewing is a bit feminine, but they made everyone do both. So in wood shop, it was really, the teacher was like telling everyone, boys and girls, like, this is something you can do, this is something you might enjoy. And sewing was the same thing. This is something you can do, this is something you might enjoy. And really making everyone get exposed to things that may be outside of the gender norms, which I don't know if that's the reason why they did it, but I thought it had an interesting effect. And both are helpful. I mean, knowing a wood shop was a little bit helpful for later in life, and the sewing has been really helpful too. I mean, I sew a lot of my clothes together. I don't like to sew clothes in general, but like if my like a pants are ripped or something like that, I'm handy with a needle. And so that's Nichols Middle School. Like I said, there's some really great teachers. One of them, a Spanish teacher who he really, put his all into the class. It would make songs, songs about conjugating verbs with GarageBand, if you remember that old Apple software. He would make these GarageBand songs about conjugating verbs and vocabulary and sing them in class, and they would just stick with you forever. And so, that was that. Not academically, not a ton sticks out from the sciences and the social studies. Those classes were pretty, generic American. We learned about like the history, American history, kind of in a bunch of different ways. Maybe a little bit of world history. They went over basic chemistry, basic biology, basic physics. And like I said, there was a big range of academic skill at that school, and the leadership and the teachers, I think, were aware, and they were really trying to boost up everyone and make sure everyone thought they could be successful. And I remember the vice principal every day during the announcements we would say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then she would have us repeat the chorus from the song "I Can" by Nas, which goes, "I know I can be what I want to be. If I work hard at it, I'll be where I want to be." And at the time, even, I think I remember thinking it was kind of corny. But maybe that maybe some kids internalized that, and maybe some people didn't think it was corny, and it helped them get through the day, and it helped them try harder on some schoolwork and learn some things that they might not have been able to learn otherwise. So, who's to say? Who's to say? So my math career continued just to skyrocket. I ran out of school math classes at the middle school after 6th grade, I guess, because I had basically been taking middle school math since elementary school. And the same thing, like they bused us to the middle school, they actually had this thing where they bused kids from all over the city to the high school to take geometry in 8th grade if they were advanced at math. And so because I was a year above that, in 7th grade, I went to the high school to start the day, and it was they didn't have to do anything special like in elementary school because it was all set up in 7th grade because I was in a class with 8th graders at the high school, and then all of us would ride this big bus back to school. So that was a pretty common thing. And so then in 8th grade, I got to take Algebra 2 at the school. And because they had enough 8th graders to run these 8th grader only geometry classes, so it wasn't like we were like in the high school and kind of like walking by high schoolers, but we were still like tiny and in our own class. But when I was in 8th grade, I was in an Algebra 2 class that was just a normal classroom with some high schoolers, some freshmen, and some sophomores. And I remember that I got a kick out of that. That was fun to be in that class. I don't know if the freshmen and the sophomores thought it was fun to have middle schoolers in their math class. That's kind of tough. That's one of the tough things about the mixing is like for the people who are advanced, it makes them feel great. And for the people who are even, at grade level or behind, it may be discouraging. And so I guess that's another one of the trade-off. Like when you had the middle school, the geometry thing where everyone was a middle schooler, that's kind of a win-win where there's no downsides. But it might have, it might not have been, they might have been a bit annoyed having these young kids in the class, especially if you recall how annoying 13-year-olds can be. Perhaps in math class, we were 13-year-olds. Anyway, off to high school. Graduated Nichols Middle School, on to Evanston Township High School, a big high school, 3,500 kids. The freshman class was about 1,000. I graduated with about 850 people. And it was a really great high school from my experience. I mean, it has a graduation rate of about 95%, a college attendance rate of 85%. The huge school means it has lots of variety of classes and options, tons of art classes, AP classes. There was even engineering classes, business classes, economy classes, computer science classes as electives. They just had the economies of scale in the school were excellent, and they just really had a lot of great opportunities. I got to take an electronic music class. There was a whole lab with MIDI keyboards. There was a huge art wing. There was a photography studio. I got to take a photography class with an actual dark room, with film cameras, developing our own pictures, in the light room, in the dark room. It was pretty great. There were tons of clubs too. I remember I was an avid mock trial participant all 4 years. Which was a lot of fun. I was the president of Dodgeball Club, which is I could talk for a whole hour about Dodgeball Club, but I'll save y'all the time right now. But if you ever see me, on the streets and want to hear some Dodgeball Club stories, I have some wild ones. And then I even, there was opportunities to really make what you ever wanted. I got to become the school's mascot. My junior year, I became this by walking into the athletic director's office, asking if I could be the mascot. He said, go talk to the cheerleading coach. I went to the cheerleading coach. I asked if I could be the mascot. She said, are you going to actually come to the games? I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, okay, the costume's in the closet. So I was Willie the Wild Kit for my junior and senior year. And yes, that is Wild Kit. Evanston Township High School shares a city with Northwestern University, and Northwestern University's mascot is the Wildcats. So naturally, Evanston Township High School is the Wild Kits, which is a mascot I did not think was unusual until I went to college and we started talking about mascots. And I said, oh yeah, we were the Wild Kits. And someone says, you mean like wild kittens? And I thought, I guess I do. So anyway, I was Willie the Wild Kitten. I'll go to basketball games. I'll go to football games. It was great fun. So freshman year, we had a lot of kind of what they called mixed honors classes. Now, Evanston Township High School historically had been very tracked. Where starting freshman year, you would either, there were different levels of math classes and science classes, and for everything else, there was honors and what they would call regular. And if you started in the regular class, it was very hard to move up to honors. And if you started honors, you can move back down to regular as the years go on. But the honors classes, they were a little bit harder, a little bit more work, but they gave you a bump on your GPA, and they obviously looked better on a transcript for college applications. So when they started people in honors classes, it depended a lot on your middle school performance, but it also depended a lot on, how much your parents are going to advocate. Like there's some students I know who were borderline, and their parents really pushed for them to be in honors, and they got in honors and it was fine and they could do the work. But